Things are heating up in the House of Commons today. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today, Chrystia Freeland goes toe-to-toe with not only Pierre Poilievre back and forth in the House of Commons, but also a couple other people. There's some surprise debates that pop up towards the end of the session with some topics that have never been brought up in the House of Commons. I'm pretty happy to hear myself. Now, while Justin Trudeau didn't show up for work today, most of his other cronies did, so let's jump into this.
While common sense conservatives are fighting to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this Prime Minister is promising a cruel April Fool's Day joke, a 23% carbon tax hike on food, gas, and groceries. This at a time when the Prime Minister has forced 50 families at CFB in Gagetown, military families, to go to food banks. 2 million Canadians every month going to those same food banks, 8,000 as part of a Facebook group where they share tips on eating out of dumpsters. Will the Prime Minister gain some compassion and some common sense and spike the hike?
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the least vulnerable in our country. This is the party that wants to cut the Canada Child benefit. This is the party that wants to cut support to our seniors. This is the party that wants to cut early learning and childcare, which supports so many families. They're opposed to dental care. They're opposed to pharmacare, Mr. Speaker.
If you notice going forward here, pay attention to Chrystia Freeland. Every time she gets up and talks and speaks, it's like she's taking her earpiece and just chucking it down. She seems so agitated and so distracted, mentally disturbed. I don't know, maybe it's because the criminal investigations are getting so close to home for them.
Fear and falsehoods to distract from the fact that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and neither is his carbon tax, which will cost the average Ontario family this coming year $1,674. $1,674 for a middle-class family that's lined up at a food bank, not able to feed themselves or pay their heating bill. Will the Prime Minister give his head a shake, cancel his cruel April Fool's Day joke, and spike the hike?
Mr. Speaker, no one here is surprised to hear the Conservative leader talk about fear and falsehoods, because that is what he traffics in every single day. It's his area of personal expertise. Now, what he is proposing is, at least he is consistent. He wants to cut the support that Canadians get, and he wants to cut the support Canadian families are getting from the price on pollution. That's $1,800 Alberta families won't get. That's $1,120 Ontario families won't get. Cut. All they know how to do.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So she just brags that Alberta families will get $1,800, but according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the carbon tax will cost Alberta families $2,943. So the Prime Minister takes away $2,943 and gives back $1,800. Mr. Speaker, it's almost like he's a bank robber who thinks that he's virtuous because he tips the teller on the way out the door. Why won't he spike the hike?
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader should know a lot about living off the public purse. That's all he has done his entire life.
Wow.
When it comes to the price on pollution, this is entirely revenue neutral. The government does not keep a penny. It returns more money to 8 out of 10 Canadian families. That's a good deal for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The government doesn't keep a penny. Did she just say that? Really? We know full well if you increase the tax on gas, the currently government tax on gas is about 50% of the price of gas. And I think that's why in the States, down in the southern states, I've got family down there, you could buy gas up until COVID. Now things have gotten all weird, but you could buy gas down there for 43 cents a liter, like Canadian. That's how cheap gas is actually. The price of gas here is so much because of the government. The word salad that Chrystia Freeland is using here is just trying to confuse people. We're going to jump further ahead after some French clips here.
They desperately don't want to answer for the carbon tax pain they're causing Canadians. And no one is fooled by the ridiculous rebate ruse this government is selling. That's because Canadians know that the carbon tax rebate was specifically designed to exclude all the secondary costs that go up when the producer, the shipper, and the retailer all have to pay their higher share of carbon taxes. And the average income earners, the middle income earners across Canada, are worse off even after the rebate. $900 worse off in Alberta, $500 worse off in Saskatchewan, $600 worse off in Ontario. Why doesn't the Prime Minister show some compassion and spike the hike?
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the member opposite talk about the rebate, because that is what it is. This is returning money to Canadians. 8 out of 10 families are better off. It is revenue neutral for the government. But I noticed that this Saskatchewan MP, a member of Parliament many of us on this side of the House really respect, someone who is proud to represent the people of Saskatchewan, I'd like to hear him say, does he support his leader's shameful position on Ukraine? Yes or no? The people of Saskatchewan deserve to know.
The Honourable...
Where did Ukraine come into this conversation? That's all she cares about is her home country of Ukraine, clearly.
A member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, food bank usage in Toronto is up 500%. Now they want to hike the carbon tax on gas, on groceries, on home heating by 23%. What a cruel April Fool's joke. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the average Ontario family will pay $1,674 of carbon tax. Where does this Prime Minister think they're going to get that kind of money?
Mr. Speaker, Canadians can see through these Conservatives, and they know that the only thing these Conservatives know how to do is cut, 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 and the people who suffer the most are the most vulnerable. They want to cut the Canada Child Benefit. They do not support dental care.
She's going to ramble the same nonsense. Let's skip ahead here, but just look at her body language. She is so distraught and like, it's almost aggressive. It's like annoyed is how it kind of looks like.
If you give back $1,000 to an Ontario family, but you take $1,674, liberal math says that's more, but real math says that's less. The Prime Minister doesn't get it. He's not worth the cost, especially for the 300,000 Torontonians who ate in a food bank just last February. They are about to hike taxes by 23% in less than 2 weeks. Why is she the only person in Canada who thinks that raising taxes will lower the cost of food?
That's never been said so well. It's just so to the point.
Nancy, Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the member opposite really believes her rhetoric about supporting Canadian families, why does she think that cutting support for them will help? Why doesn't she support early learning and childcare? Why doesn't she support the Canada Child Benefit, which has helped to lift more than 2.3 million Canadians, particularly children, out of poverty? Why doesn't she support dental care, which is helping the poorest Canadians be able to take care of their health and their teeth? That is Conservative hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker.
If you notice her hair here, she's definitely turning gray. That's probably from the stress of impending jail is my guess.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough Kawartha.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP coalition, food has never been more expensive. In fact, food is so unaffordable that 50 active serving military families from CFB Gagetown are using the Oromocto Food Bank. This is outrageous, it is shocking, and it is unacceptable. Right. So, for the 100th time, on behalf of all the Canadians and 70% of the premiers in this country, will they spike the hike, axe the tax, and make food more affordable?
The Honourable
Speaker, that's an extraordinary comment, and I'd like to commend the member for being able to say it with a straight face.
The gall of this man.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, we gave members of the Canadian Armed Forces a very significant raise just last year. And when it came before this House to vote for the money for that raise, every single Conservative on that side of the House voted against it. Shame. Mr. Speaker, perhaps they should scrap the crap.
Shame.
Scrap the crap.
I'm going to ask members to be very judicious in their use of words, making sure that...
Mr. Speaker, that's exactly the lack of classy response I would expect from a Liberal. And the reality is he doesn't know what's going on because clearly he doesn't listen. These are 50 real families accessing a food bank under that Prime Minister's watch. $700 more in groceries a year for Canadian families. Low-income families are most impacted. 1 million more users of food banks this year. Students, seniors, low-income families. Those are the facts. That's what we will keep fighting for. Spike the hike, axe the tax.
Mr. Speaker, many people in this House profess to support members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and yet when it came time to put your money where your mouth is, they weren't there. Mr. Speaker, that's the height of hypocrisy.
Shame.
So once again here, we're going to jump forward past a bunch of the French clips.
After 8 years, this Liberal Prime Minister is just not worth the cost for Canadian farmers. On April 1st, the Prime Minister is going to increase the carbon tax 23%, and the impact on Canadian food production is staggering. A grain farmer in Simcoe County paid $36,000 in the carbon tax in 1 month. The carbon tax cost a poultry farmer in Alberta $180,000 last year. The food professor, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, advised the Liberals to spike the hike or see wholesale food costs go up 34%. Wow. Food production is no joke. Will the Prime Minister spike the hike so farmers can afford to grow food?
That's outrageous.
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague is well aware that farmers are on the front line of climate change. He's also fully aware that we have a climate change environmental plan. He's also aware that his constituents receive $1,800 a year in their bank account. Is that what you want to cut? $1,800 out of your constituent's bank account? I disagree.
Is he really arguing 1,000? Was it? What did he say? $1,800 over the $36,000 the farmer paid in 1 month? That $1,800 too would be split up over the whole year versus $36,000 in a month, or the other guy that paid whatever $180,000 a year. Really, this is your argument?
The Caring Covered Food Bank in Prince Edward Island is struggling just to keep its doors open. It can't handle the increase in demand, up 70%, 5,500 families. I know the Prime Minister is bored, but will he listen to Canadians, axe the tax, so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, it is very surprising to hear the member opposite talk about support for the most vulnerable Canadians. But I'm glad he is turning his attention there. So if he cares about the families of PEI, I want to understand, does he support our early learning and childcare system, which PEI has been enthusiastically a part of, which is putting money back in the pockets of PEI families? That is real support.
The Honourable Member.
We've heard lots of stories about Canadians with disabilities receiving unacceptable treatment while traveling with Canadian Airlines. The Minister of Transport said it best when he said, our airlines need to do a better job for Canadians. So, can he tell us what's happening next?
Ugh. I hate these kind of things where they stand up and they just read, like, this is one Liberal puffing up another. It's embarrassing. Because look, the Minister of Transport is going to get up and like, oh, well, we're doing this and we're doing that.
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his amazing work. And I've been clear, what happened was completely unacceptable. All Kenyans must be treated with dignity and respect, full stop. Airlines have to do better. We all have to do better. And the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Persons with Disability and I want to see action now, which is why I'm announcing an Air Accessibility Summit in Ottawa on May 9th.
Oh, thank goodness. Another summit. That's just what Canadians need. We're going to be spending like, what, another $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on your stupid summit. You guys can wine and dine, waste money, fly around, have a nice vacation for a weekend and do nothing. That's what always happens. And to be completely honest here, I have no idea what he said there. Air Abilities Summit?
An Air Accessibility Summit, an Air Accessibility Summit, an Air Accessibility Summit.
An Air Accessibility Bixley Summit? What is the word he's saying? I don't even know what he's saying. It doesn't matter. I know it's going to be a waste of our money. Towards the end of House of Commons here, Conservative gets up and starts pointing out the carbon tax in BC, and basically BC residents like myself, I've lived here for 20 years for the most part. I have lived in, for transparency, I've lived in Ontario as well, and I grew up in Alberta. So I've been around the country. I lived in St. Catharines, Ontario for a few years. I'd have a general idea of different areas of the country. In BC here, we don't get money back, but we have to pay the carbon tax. And now that there's a national carbon tax, it's like I have to pay more on shipping for stuff that comes in from out of BC. It's horrendous. And I'm just happy to see that a Conservative has brought this up in the House of Commons.
In British Columbia, the carbon tax is going up 23% on April 1st. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, middle-income families are depending on food banks. They receive absolutely nothing. No federal tax rebate, no provincial tax credit. But they do get higher prices for food, gas, and heating. 7 of 10 premiers are demanding the Prime Minister spike the hike, but the NDP Premier of BC is cheering it on. Will the Prime Minister stop the suffering and authorize Premier Eby to spike the hike on April 1st?
Mr. Speaker, as with the Conservative Quebec MPs, we are hearing a question that demonstrates either profound ignorance or profound disrespect of the system that the province of BC put in place. BC in 2008, led by a center-right provincial government, put in place a world-leading price on pollution. That system is popular. That system was voted for by some current Conservative federal MPs from BC. Do they want to tear it apart?
I did not vote for that, just so we're clear here.
The honourable member from South Surrey, White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we absolutely do, because that was a baloney answer from this minister, and that's what we're getting from the BC Premier as well. There's 200,000 British Columbians relying on food banks in a single month now. The tax credit shell game, if you qualify, is way less than you pay. BC already has the highest gas prices, $2 a litre just this morning. A 23% hike will force up prices another 18 cents a litre. This Prime Minister isn't worth the cost. Will he show some compassion and authorize the BC Premier to spike the hike on April 1st?
Mr. Speaker, did the MP from BC just accuse the Premier of BC of putting forward baloney policies for the people of BC?
I bet she did.
Is the Federal Conservative Party intending to step on the jurisdiction of the province of BC? Is it intending to go against a system put in place in 2008 by a center-right BC provincial government that the people of BC support? That is astonishing, Mr. Speaker.
Astonishing.
The honourable member from Central Okanagan, Similkani Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, more and more British Columbians are lining up at food banks. That's not baloney. The fact that many can't afford to drive with $1.99 a litre gas isn't baloney either. What's also not baloney is on page 75 of the BC's 2024 budget, where the provincial government blames this Prime Minister for forcing a 23% carbon tax hike on April 1st. Will the Prime Minister help sandwich British Columbians and spike the hike, or do British Columbians need to throw him out like an old, spoiled, stale pack of baloney? Hey.
The puns that Dan's ripping out here, man, that can't have been planned.
Mr. Speaker, let's just remember that every single one of the Conservative MPs in this House today ran on a platform promising a price on pollution. And let's just remember that the BC caucus of that party includes MPs who, when they were in the provincial legislature, voted for British Columbia's current world-leading price on pollution. So Canadians and the people of BC have to ask themselves, do they even know what they campaigned on and what they voted for?
World leading, folks. We've got the world leading carbon tax. What a great thing to have.
This NDP Liberal government has been trying to cover up the full cost of their $60 million Arrive scam. And after 8 years of this Prime Minister and his NDP Liberal government, they're not worth the cost or the corruption. And he's been hiding the documents, and we've been hearing the paper shredders, but his homework is due today. So the question is to the Prime Minister, at what time will he respect the common sense Conservative motion that was passed by this House and deliver all of the documents and the full cost of his Arrive scam scandal?
So for anyone not aware, those documents are all due today, which is Monday the 18th, March 18th. They have yet to be delivered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As many ministers, including the CVSC minister, has said often, what happened during COVID-19 when it's regarding the application was unacceptable, despite the fact that it was built in a moment at which it was important for public servants to be efficient and acting quickly. Unfortunately, some of the rules were not followed, and there's more work to do, although much of the work that the Auditor General asked us to do has already been implemented.
The Auditor General asked in terms of information this government didn't even want to provide. That's why they voted against having the Auditor General investigate this Prime Minister's $60 million Arrive scam. It's clear that after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government that they're not worth the corruption or worth the cost. That $60 million, Speaker, was for outside consultants. It wasn't for public servants who needed to act quickly. It was for Ottawa insiders who are getting rich, being made millionaires while Canadians struggle and are now lined up at food banks. This Prime Minister's had weeks. He won't stand up, but we've ordered him to provide the documents. At what time will they be provided?
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, our government has been transparent with Canadians and with Parliament. We've had officials, we've had ministers appear before parliamentary committees. We understand the concern that Canadians have around the appropriate use of taxpayers' money. And Mr. Speaker, in spite of my friend's pessimism, I don't share his view that this government will always continue to be transparent with Canadians around this matter.
The honourable member from Fort Saskatchewan, Sherwood Park.
After 8 years, the Arrive scam scandal has made clear again that this NDP Liberal government and this Prime Minister are not worth the cost or the corruption. That's right. Liberals gave GC Strategies $20 million for Arrive scam alone. Now, last week, Christian Firth from GC Strategies revealed that he got at least $2,600 per hour for subcontracting. Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, and Liberals are giving well-connected consultants multi-millions at $2,600 per hour.
Unbelievable.
Simple question. Do Liberals believe that $2,600 per hour was a reasonable rate?
Wasn't reasonable.
This guy here is like the ultimate low-key hype man. He's got a low booming voice that comes through the mic, but it's just funny.
Minister for Public Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, there are internal investigations being conducted into all these matters. We welcome the report of the Auditor General. The RCMP is investigating some elements of this matter. And Mr. Speaker, if at any time...
The RCMP haven't even contacted Christian Firth and Darren Anthony from GC Strategies. They haven't even called them once. They're just trying to sweep this under the rug. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and like, our money was stolen. We want our money back. So that sums it up for this episode. Getting a little spicy in there. I'm really curious to see what happens when Justin Trudeau shows up for work. Apparently he has to show up for work twice this week, so he's going to get grilled, absolutely grilled twice. And you know the Conservatives are going to be ready for it. They've got so many zingers. They've got the puns with the baloney is just like, it's funny because it's just so off the cuff. The Arrive scam thing, I've got some clips I got to show you guys. It's just hilarious. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what happens there. This can't go on much longer without something happening. You can't just have two guys who've basically said, yeah, we're getting paid $2,600 an hour. What are you going to do about it? They basically just blamed the government and said, well, they're okay with it. So someone has to get arrested. Nobody wants to say who it is. Christian Firth refused to say who it was. On a side note, let me know what you guys think about Chrystia Freeland. She looks definitely annoyed, agitated, I think would be the word. She just looks very irritated and doesn't want to be there. I gotta think she's getting worried about investigations getting a little too close. She seemed to speak up pretty quickly there for Ukraine, so good for Ukraine. I'm glad they've got a representative of their country in our our House of Commons here. That's where we're going to leave this episode. Thanks for watching the end of the video here. If you guys want to check out some merch, that's linked up in the shelf down below. I'm going to make some new bumper stickers. So if you guys have ideas for bumper stickers, I've been writing down some of your hilarious comments. I will turn into bumper stickers. If you have anything else, leave it down below. If you put bumper sticker, like type out bumper sticker with a colon and then put it, it'll allow me to search through the 1,000 comments. Basically every video I put up here gets like 800 to 12 or 1,500 comments. It's like impossible for me. I try to go through them. It's impossible. But if you put bumper sticker, I can search it. So leave that down below. Thanks for watching the end of the video here. I greatly appreciate all you guys. Stay warm, stay fed. I'll see you on the next one.